Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. This is a public hearing on zoning text amendment 2005, commercial residential zones, additional height. This ZTA would allow additional building height in the commercial residential zone under certain circumstances. A Fed committee work session on this ZTA will be scheduled at a future date. Persons wishing to submit additional material for the council's consideration should do so before the close of business, January 29th, 2021. Each individual will have 2 minutes to speak. Individuals will be alerted as they approach their 2 minutes and may be disconnected. Also, there may be technical glitches during the public hearing that may need to be addressed by our staff. So thanks in advance for your patience. Ms. Kennedy, do we have speakers for this public hearing?
Yes, we do. Our first speaker for this public hearing is Casey Anderson. Mr. Anderson, you may begin. You have 2 minutes.
Thank you, Council President Hucker. We are pleased to support the idea behind this CTA, but we take no position on the specifics because we have some concerns about how it would be applied in ways that would affect properties that were really not intended to be covered. We certainly appreciate the need to see expeditious development of the site at the intersection of Georgia and Colesville, which was the project that precipitated the CTA, and I think share both the applicant and I think the council's frustration with the inability to move forward on the previously approved hotel project. Our concern is that a ZTA that raises the height limit under the criteria described in the CTA would cover at least half a dozen, perhaps as many as 8 or 9 properties in downtown Silver Spring at a time when we're undertaking a master plan process for Silver Spring, and that would include really a large proportion of the potential development sites covered by this new master plan. So we are committed to working with the applicant and the council staff about other options, which include letting the master plan process play out, moving forward with the local map amendment, modifying this CTA, or taking another approach that would allow development on this parcel and block to go forward without creating unintended consequences. Thanks very much for your attention to our testimony.
Very helpful. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Our next speaker is Tim Eden. Mr. Eden, you may unmute yourself and begin your testimony. You have 2 minutes.
Thank you very much. Do we have the slides that we could bring up? Slide 3 in particular? Okay. Having none. So Tim Eden with Star Capital, managing partner for 8600 Georgia Avenue in Silver Spring. Our site is 145 feet, surrounded on all 4 sides by property zoned for 200. We realize the height is likely to be addressed in the sector plan, but we'd rather not wait for 2 years. The CTA allows us to proceed to the opportunity to bring this project forward that would produce hundreds of construction, permanent jobs, affordable housing, and obviously a significant improvement to the county tax base. Obviously, the planning board approved our plan for our hotel. Unfortunately, after 36 months of appeal, we've been unable to proceed due to the site plan condition that requires us to construct an $8 million sewer line to serve the project and others in the future. WSSC policy required us to be reimbursed by the new development, but no assurance that reimbursement would ever happen. COVID-19 has crippled the hotel market, and the project that we had approved is no longer viable, so we have pivoted to apartments and are ready to proceed with the planning process with your support. The proposed ETA provides height and density that are needed to justify the additional housing cost and the demolition of existing outdated income properties. So all this is consistent with the sector plan update. We also have an opportunity to acquire 2 other adjoining retail properties to assemble the block and make for a better project. And with your help, we'd like to move forward with the project as soon as we can. I don't really have any other comments at this point, but I'm happy to take any questions. And I certainly thank Casey for his thoughts. And we're committed to working with staff, planning staff that is, and council staff to make the ZTA effective and helping to get us off dead center.
Thank you, Mr. Eden. Mr. President, that wraps up the speakers for this public hearing.
Thank you, Ms. Kennedy. We can now move on to agenda item 8, This is a public hearing on zoning text amendment 2006, surface parking residential zones. This ZTA would amend the definition of surface parking for use allowed in the zone, allow site plan approval to supersede a special exception for parking in a residential detached zone under certain circumstances, and generally amend the provisions for surface parking for use allowed in the zone. A Fed committee work session on this ZTA will be scheduled at a future date. Persons wishing to submit additional testimony for the council's consideration should do so before the close of business on January 29th, 2021. Ms. Kennedy, do we have speakers for this public hearing?
Yes, we have one speaker for this public hearing, William Commoners. Mr. Commoners, you may begin. You have 2 minutes.
Good afternoon, President Hucker, members of the council. I'm Bill Commoners with Lurch, Early and Brewer, speaking today as an individual in support of ZTA 20-06. Years ago, because commercial zones did not generally have FAR limitations, if the county controlled the amount of commercial development was to zone only a portion of the property for commercial use and leave the remainder as residential. This resulted in a donut hole of commercial zoning surrounded by a donut of residential with a special exception for parking to support the commercial use. As FAR standards were developed, the entire property could be zoned commercial and limited by FAR instead. As a result, in the 2014 zoning rewrite, this special exception was eliminated, though existing approvals were grandfathered. But updating of the site design of these properties can require bouncing between the Board of Appeals to deal with the special exception and the Planning Board for the commercial area and buildings. This can lead to conflicts between those approvals. ZTA 2006 is intended to bring those parking areas forward under the current ordinance and provide for a unified regulatory review by the Planning Board. With this ZTA, the changes in the commercial use and the parking can all be undertaken through a single process of site plan review by the Planning Board that can encompass the entire site. This eliminates the problems of the dual approvals of today. One slight modification that should be made to the format is the location of the site plan language. It should be revised to acknowledge that it can apply to applications with or without a sketch plan. This revision has been endorsed by the Planning Board and its staff. There are a couple of additional small changes that just came up that I'm discussing with staff as of today. We'll resolve those shortly. In summary, the zoning text amendment converts the old special exceptions to a new defined use and brings those separate proceedings together under the coverage of the new zoning ordinance, thus helping promote regulatory efficiency for the county as well as procedural efficiency for the property owners and businesses. Thank you very much for your consideration.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mr. Commoners. Mr. President, that wraps up the speakers for this public hearing.
Terrific.
Mr. President, I believe I was signed up to speak on all three of these ZTAs. I'm sorry if I've done something out of order administratively.
Mr. Anderson, that is my fault. You were supposed to have 4 minutes under agenda item 7, so you can have 2 minutes on this particular item if you'd like.
Okay, I won't take all the time. I want to just say the Planning Board supports this ZTA for the reasons that Mr. Commoners described. We also would recommend a slight modification to clarify that the more efficient process that the Council President has proposed in the ZTA should apply whether or not a sketch plan is required with the application.
Thank you very much.
And did you want me to address 2008 at the same time, or would you prefer that I wait until?
Well, why don't we bring you in on that next public hearing?
Okay, very good. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. President. That wraps up the speakers here.
Thank you, Ms. Kennedy. So that closes the public hearing on item 7. It also closes the public hearing on item 8. Let's move on to item 9. This is a public hearing on zoning text amendment 2008, residential care facilities, continuing care retirement communities. This ZTA would define the term continuing care retirement community and generally amend the provisions for residential care facilities. Fed committee work session on this ZTA will be scheduled at a future date. Persons wishing to submit additional material for the council's consideration should do so before the close of business on January 29th. Ms. Kennedy, why don't you introduce the speakers for this public hearing?
Our first speaker for this public hearing is David Brown. Mr. Brown, you have 2 minutes and you may begin when you're ready.
Good afternoon, David Brown of Knopf & Brown on behalf of the Greater South Glen Neighborhood Association in opposition to ZTA 2008. 3 quick points. First, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. Independent and assisted senior living are currently regulated under different conditional use standards because they are different uses. If there's good reason to combine the two, as this CTA does, the thinly researched justification presented by the planning board falls far short of making the case. Second, on the details, the ZTA is not ready for prime time, even if the case is made for combining the two uses. Where there are such combined uses elsewhere in the U.S., you'll find that although the living units for the two uses are in different wings or floors of the facility, they in fact share much of what is desirable about senior group living, such as on-site health and wellness services, game, craft, or music rooms, a main lounge area, outdoor gardens and walkways, and possibly much more. All this is skillfully arranged to promote an easy transition from independent living to assisted living. Under the ZTA, there is no regulation-enhanced promotion of such facility sharing and transitioning. Indeed, there could be no connection at all between the two uses. Third, property ownership by the seniors should not be an available option. Seniors ready to step into the senior living continuum are typically those who have enjoyed the benefits of home ownership and have decided that they're ready to leave property ownership burdens behind for a new way of life. Acquiring a contractual right to use and occupancy of the facility, which should not be a platform for the sale of real estate. This ties in well with the need for conditional uses to have but one real property owner and operator, that is the holder of the conditional use, which will greatly simplify conditional use oversight and transfer at the Board of Appeals. Thank you very much for your consideration.
Thank you, Mr. Brown. Our next speaker is Patricia Harris. Ms. Harris, you may begin. You have 2 minutes.
Thank you. Good afternoon. Pat Harris with Lurch, Early and Brewer here in support of the zoning text amendment. Over the years, we've been approached by multiple times by senior care providers interested in providing a senior community in a building type other than an apartment style multifamily senior building. We support the planning board's recommendation to change the terminology of the zoning text amendment to senior care community. That will avoid some confusion, and the staff report elaborates on this. I just want to highlight a few points. First of all, the zoning text amendment would allow, subject to conditional use approval, senior communities in a less intensive development style than what is currently permitted in an apartment style living design. It would still require conditional use approval, and that's important because that means a comprehensive hearing before the zoning hearing examiner, meeting all the criteria of a conditional use, including compatibility. Because the zoning text amendment would allow a building type which is less intensive than what is currently permitted for senior living, it seems like any opposition to this is it's confusing and perplexing why there even would be any opposition to this. Montgomery County should not want to provide senior housing only in apartment style buildings. It's telling that currently 45% of people living in the county say that it's not conducive to senior living. And one of the reasons may be the lack of diverse housing for seniors. There's a segment of the population that is searching out a different type of style of living. And if they don't get it in Montgomery County, they will simply move to a neighboring jurisdiction that does provide it. I think the county has an obligation for the people that have lived their entire lives here to provide a more diverse senior housing product. Plus, I think it's important to note that those seniors that may be exiting the county to go to a neighboring jurisdiction take with them meaningful tax dollars.
I'm sorry to interrupt. Your time is up. Thank you very much for your testimony. Our next person to testify will be Suzanne Lee. Ms. Lee, you may begin. You have 2 minutes.
Thank you. My name is Susan Lee, testifying on behalf of the West Montgomery County Citizens Association. And as an initial comment, I just wanted to note that the zoning text amendment that's put before you that was noticed in the public hearing was amended by the planning board just last Thursday. So now they have a totally different proposal coming forward to you. My comments apply to both. We have no objection, which is what they're doing now in this most recent, to adding back into the zoning code, as there was in the 2004 code, a definition of CCRC that's consistent with the state statutes. However, we are adamantly opposed to the remainder of the current and the revised ZTA. It's just unnecessary. The zoning code already allows for residential care facilities in a wide range of housing styles, not just apartments, including in separate buildings. Think about everything from residential group homes to upscale Ingleside at King Farm to the campuses of Riderwood, Friends House, and the Village at Rockville. As described in the background information we've submitted for the record, including the February 28, 2020 advisory opinion by the director of OZA, this CTA is part of a blatant continuing attempt by the law firm of Lurch Early Brewer to increase density for their clients by using the zoning code's group living conditional use provisions to place non-group household living in the form of individually owned, fee simple duplexes and triplexes in low density zones where they are not permitted. Their previous attempts to do so were rejected by OZA as inconsistent with the zoning code. They are now trying to change the established zoning code rules and structure to benefit a select group of landowners and developers through an unnecessary, unwarranted, and illogical ZTA. We ask that you really reject both versions, both the one that was submitted to you and that's subject to this current public hearing, and the new one that the planning board just adopted last Thursday, but which it appears they haven't submitted to you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Lee. The next speaker for this public hearing is Casey Anderson. Mr. Anderson, you have 2 minutes and you may begin.
We support this ETA as it's with the modifications recommended by the planning board, including the change in definition that's been described. I guess I would just add that we believe that the premise of some of the opponents that it is an important public function to regulate the building form and tenure type of senior housing is simply not grounded in any legitimate application of the police power. There's no reason for the government to dictate to senior citizens whether or not they should live in a duplex or whether or not they should own rather than rent the residence that they inhabit as they get on in years. And really, I think that this reflects broader issues about in this county. We've really tried to regulate to the hilt exactly what we think is an appropriate way for people to live. And it's costing us in terms of the flexibility that we have as we get older, the lifestyles that we choose to leave. And the planning board believes that this is an entirely reasonable and modest effort to provide for a need that the market has identified, that it's emerged over time, to give people a new option for a place that they can live as they get older. So that's why we support this CTA.
Thank you, Mr. Anderson. Mr. President, that wraps up the speakers for this public hearing.
Thank you, Ms. Kennedy. That closes this public hearing. Let me move on to item 10. This is a public hearing on expedited bill 221, taxation, development impact taxes for transportation and public school improvements, amendments, effective date. This bill would change the effective date of Chapter 37, Laws of Montgomery County 2020. Action is tentatively scheduled for February 2nd, 2021. Persons wishing to submit additional material for the council's consideration should do so before the close of business on January 27th. If you would like to follow the progress of a council bill, the council website has a subscribe function. Go to the council website and use the View Council Records and Legislative Updates link to learn more. Ms. Kennedy, can you introduce the speaker for this public hearing, please?
We have no speaker for this public hearing.
Mr. McDonald is not with us?
No, he is not.
Gotcha. Okay, thank you. So this hearing is now closed. We can move on, colleagues, to legislative session for day number 3. We have some bill introductions. Bill 421 is titled Weapons, Protection of Minors in Public Places, Restrictions Against Ghost Guns and Undetectable Guns. The lead sponsor is Council Vice President Albornoz. Council Vice President Albornoz.
Thank you, Mr. President. And first, I want to thank all of my colleagues for unanimously co-sponsoring this important piece of legislation. Ghost guns are a new technology that has emerged. And what they are products that are made out of plastic and fiberglass. They come in the form of kits or through 3D printers. And when assembled, and they often come mostly assembled with just a few degrees of additional steps that someone needs to take by visiting their local hardware store and watching a very simple to follow YouTube video, they end up with a weapon, they end up with a gun. And this is a rising issue in Montgomery County. 73 of these weapons were confiscated by MCPD, the majority of which were used in the act of a crime. And we also know that these weapons do not require serial numbers and that they are fairly easily purchased online, and they fall into a gray area of the law in both the federal and state governments. And so we as a local government must continue to take steps to protect our residents, protect our citizens. And that's why it's important for us to, as aggressively as we can, enact legislation that prevents harmful weapons such as ghost guns from getting into inappropriate, to the hands of those most vulnerable, especially our youth. And so this legislation will primarily do several things. One, define what exactly we mean by a ghost gun. It will also restrict the manufacture, possession, and use and sale and transfer of ghost guns, also known as undetectable guns. And it's important to note that this piece of legislation on its own is certainly not going to resolve a growing issue. And I want to thank Delegate Leslie Lopez and our colleagues in the state legislature who are enacting a sister bill at the state level, which combined with this bill at the local level will further enhance laws and regulations as we await the federal government to act more aggressively in this specific arena. I'd also like to thank our Office of Legislative Oversight, who, as they do with every bill that is introduced by my colleagues and I, they look at these through racial equity lens. And what they found is that because gun violence so unbelievably disproportionately impacts our minority communities, steps that we as a county government take to prevent the sale and transaction of weapons such as ghost guns are important from a racial equity standpoint. And I'll also note that these guns are difficult to detect through metal detectors because, again, they are made with plastic and fiberglass. And so in light of the insurrection that occurred just less than 2 weeks ago before our Capitol and the threats that have been placed on state houses across the country, it's even more important and more pressing for us to take preemptive action to prevent these weapons from ending up in the wrong hands. So I'd like to thank Ms. Christine Wellens, who is the lead legislative attorney who helped draft this very important bill. I want to thank my entire team, but especially my Deputy Chief of Staff, Livian Cruz, who is the lead on public safety matters in our office and did a fantastic job conducting research, calling our colleagues in the District of Columbia, which passed similar legislation, and has also been working closely with Montgomery County Police, the state's attorney's office, as well as our colleagues in the legislature. So once again, thank you for all of my colleagues supporting this important piece of legislation. Look forward to the public hearing and then discussion in the Public Safety Committee before it comes back before full council. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. The next bill is Bill 521, Agricultural Land Preservation, Solar Collection System, Dedication of Business Personal Property Tax Revenue. The lead sponsor is Councilmember Friedson. Councilmember Friedson, do you have anything to say about this fine piece of legislation?
Thanks. Just very briefly on this, appreciate a lot of discussion that has taken place already. We've been working our way through this bill. I talked about it a bit during the joint committee sessions. This is effectively a companion bill to the solar ZTA in the agricultural reserve. Still some work that remains on that bill, but assuming that bill moves forward, this would
allow for any of the proceeds from personal property tax specifically to go directly to agricultural preservation easements. This is one of the critical issues facing the agricultural community and our farmers outside of questions related to this bill, but directly related to some of those issues. And so this would allow us to take the personal property tax that will be generated specifically from solar facilities and put it directly into the agricultural preservation program, a program that struggles with funding because it is based on transfer taxes from farms turning into subdivisions. And because of the great decision that was made in 1980 to create the agricultural reserve, we have fewer and fewer farms that are turning into subdivisions, so less and less agricultural transfer tax, which does have, I wouldn't say an unintended consequence, but a consequence of not knowing where additional revenues are going to come from. There are other opportunities with increased land value and other things that I think should allow us to provide more funding, for instance, directly for the Office of Agriculture and some other related areas that have been discussed by the committee. But this is specifically for the ag preservation easements and that crucial program, and specifically from personal property tax, which is the cleanest, easiest, and I think most important funding that we can provide. And hopeful for support of this legislation if the zoning text amendment proceeds through the process, and look forward to further discussion on it. Thank you.
Terrific. With that, we have two bills introduced. We can move on to item 12. That's the Councilmember Reamer.
Thanks. I just wanted to offer a brief comment on the introduction of the agricultural transfer tax dedication of revenues. I think this presents a real win-win opportunity. My office worked on this idea as well. We were happy to defer to Councilmember Friedson to put in the work of putting it together. If we are successful in generating the 1,800 acres of solar development that, dual use solar development where agricultural uses continue, that the zoning text amendment has, then the installations of the solar arrays will be taxable personal property. And that's a lot of revenue coming in that is not presently coming in. And we have an opportunity to allocate that funding. The proposed legislation devotes it all to BLTs. My recommendation would certainly be to open it up to other innovative agricultural practices to help farmers get started with the new dual use concepts and other kinds of new farmer attractions. So, we'll have plenty of conversation. There's plenty to talk about if we actually pass a meaningful ZTA. If we don't, then there's not going to be much revenue to allocate. But we could use this to enact the first significant increase in BLT funding in memory, and establish a long-term source of funding. So it has a real potential to be a win-win. It was put forward, certainly in my conception, as the kind of win-win solution that would bring parties together, and I hope that's what it will ultimately be. Thank you.
Thank you. Is that it? As the most interesting man in the world might say, I don't always love dedicated revenue streams, but when I do, it's for important climate initiatives like this. Okay, so I think we can move on to the county fiscal.
Mr. President, I'd actually texted you.
Councilmember Rice, I beg your pardon.
That's right. I'd just like to be added as a co-sponsor, please.
Terrific. We will add you. Councilmember Katz.
And I too would like to be added as a co-sponsor, please. Was I on one?
And I think that's it. Just checking. Okay.
Thank you.
Colleagues, I believe we can move on to the fiscal update. Mr. Howard and Mr. Smith are with us, I believe, for this item.
Yes, and this is Marlene Michelson. I'm actually going to start with a bit of an introduction before I turn it over to them. We believe that the one of the most important roles of the council is to ensure the fiscal health of the county. And you do that in a number of ways, predominantly through your review of the budget, by also setting fiscal policy which drives the budget. And one of the things we're going to be talking to you about today, or reminding you of, is the fiscal policies you've set in the past. And if there's nothing else that you take away from this briefing today, it is our very strong advice that you either adhere to the fiscal policies or amend them, which, you know, is totally appropriate in unique circumstances, but not simply to ignore them. And so there may be opportunities to revisit ones that you think in light of a pandemic need to be treated differently. And a great example of that may be the reserve policy and perhaps having a new target for this year. So, you know, we want to emphasize the importance of fiscal policies. We currently believe that there still is a gap, and we're going to go through that in more detail. And obviously, there are a lot of uncertainties here. But at this point in time, there is a gap we need to face. We think that should be done with fiscal policy in mind. We also want to urge caution in spending on future special appropriations or costs until we know more about the gap. And finally, what we've prepared for you is a list of all the different ways in which the council has considered closing the gap in the past. It's kind of a menu at this point. We're not recommending any specific choices, but want to make sure you're aware of the options that you have. And with that, I'll turn it over to Craig and Jean for the presentation. Yeah.
Before Mr. Howard and Mr. Smith, let me just add to your framing. I think that's very helpful. Obviously, we all know the county is facing a significant fiscal gap, both in FY21 and 22. We're very hopeful to receive a lot of new federal funding that we've been promised for months, and then, of course, was abruptly stripped out of the last bipartisan relief package by Senator McConnell. But hopefully, we'll be dealing with a Senate that looks at these things differently very soon. We've also collectively, as a body, advocated to the governor for more relief funds for local governments to help us backfill the spending. The state, of course, had nearly $1 billion in the rainy day fund, which was carefully created and built up over many years, exactly for a period like we're living through. And they have $585 million in surplus from the FY20 budget, which the state certainly was not anticipating having at this point. And both the state's chief investment officer and chief fiscal officer have called on the governor to release those funds to help local governments like ours balance our budgets. You know, the stresses that we're talking about today are not unique to Montgomery County. They affect every county in the country as well as every county in the state. That's why, as Ms. Michelson said, the county council sent a formal request. Since we can't count on the federal government and the state government to do the right thing, we sent a request to the county executive for the savings plan that we've now received, a second savings plan for this year, and to have this follow-up fiscal update, which was requested by the GO committee chair, which I want to call on in just a minute. We know we're likely to have additional pandemic-related expenditures that are very prudent coming and unavoidable coming up before us. The discussion today is going to look at the entire framework of OPEB and the reserves and the employee compensation, including the differential pay. We won't be acting on any of this information today, just so the public's aware of that. And we're going to have an additional closed session. I want to make sure my colleagues know we're anticipating having a closed session as quickly as possible to look at the differential pay agreements so we can discuss those in greater detail than we'll be able to get into today. And we'll continue our work on this whole challenge before us as we get more information, which I think will be coming very rapidly after the change in the administration of the federal government tomorrow. So thank you all for engaging in this look at our fiscal picture during this snapshot in time, knowing that we're not going to accomplish everything today, take action today, and we're going to have new information starting hopefully tomorrow. So Madam Chair, let me see what the chair of the GO committee would like to add.
Thank you, Mr. President, and thank you, Ms. Michelson, Mr. Howard, and Mr. Smith for all your work. We've been in touch along the way to discuss just all the moving pieces. I just really want to share that, prior to the pandemic, we all agreed that we needed to take a very in-depth look at our fiscal policies. It's just something that is important to do, especially since this council, along with the previous administration, had made some very important decisions and promises in terms of our fiscal policies and certain targets, which we pretty much were able to meet. I mean, some years it was difficult and there were starts, and stops along the way, but we were pretty good at, I think, hitting that target. And of course, we always utilize the AAA bond rating as a way to demonstrate that we have been disciplined and we have been really able to deliver what we promised. Now, this was before the pandemic, and we began a bit of that work. Obviously, once this pandemic hit, everything really went into overdrive in terms of trying to respond to the needs out there. And I wanted to frame it that way because that hasn't changed. And I think it's important for us to understand that the need that exists in our communities has not changed. As a matter of fact, it's gotten even worse, particularly in those communities that we have all talked about time and time again. As we use this term equity, there are still growing needs that have been exacerbated by this pandemic that we have not been able to address fully. And I think that is an important component for us to keep in mind as we engage in this conversation about our fiscal health, because this is really an ecosystem and we can't just parse it out. And we can't just say, let's talk about compensation for our employees, or let's talk about differential pay. Oh, what about, then we'll talk about OPEB, and maybe then we'll talk about the reserves and what will we use the reserves for? It's all connected. And I want to stress that because it is going to be pivotal that even though it's different, that in this particular moment, we really truly come to the table with an open mind, but also with some trepidation of the fact that this is definitely a very critical moment in time. During the last recession, as a very new, minted council member, it was clear that this was our number one priority. It was how do we get the county back on its feet, and what do we need to do in order to achieve that? We're in that moment again, precisely because despite of whatever money we might get, and thankfully with the Biden administration, it'll be a different day. Regardless, let's not forget that before the pandemic, we were already seeing some signs that we were in a tight situation and that we needed to address our fiscal health. So at the same time that we can't be complacent, we do also have to remember who are we trying to serve and what is our responsibility during this emergency. And in my opinion, it's very important that we address the needs that are out there that continue to grow. So having said that, I think this fiscal update will be important, will contain, as it always has been said, a snapshot in time. But as I've shared with many of you, my intention from the very beginning was that we should be proactive, that, alongside the executive, that we should come together, that we should try to at least agree on general principles of where we would like to go, because this is all of our responsibilities. It is not one branch or the other. And I've sought to, do that through some conversations. And it is my hope that along with, the leadership of Councilmember Hucker, Council President Hucker, and Vice President Albornoz, that this happens and that we replicate what we did during the last recession, which I think was very productive, where we came together. We didn't agree on all the details, but we had an agreement in terms of the totality of the fiscal policies and the promises and what we held hands and said we were going to do. We have got to do that. We have no choice but to do that. And I truly believe that more than ever, we have got to lead by example and achieve such a important blueprint for our fiscal future. So, so thank you. And again, thank you to staff who's been running numbers and calculating different scenarios and things like that. I appreciate that. And I want to thank all my colleagues as well, because I know everybody is eager to make sure that we get to a place that is positive and that, you know, that lives to this notion of equity, but also of economic sustainability and vibrancy for our county. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Okay, gentlemen, we have set up all the salad forks and dessert spoons for you. The table is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Hucker and Chair Navarro. And in fact, I think you've said everything, so no, we can move on to the presentation. So hold on a second, just adjusting. Thank you. So as Chair Navarro said, the council and the executive worked very collaboratively during the last recession to strengthen the county's fiscal health and protect the county's AAA bond rating, which it has had for many, many years. One of the few counties that has been able to achieve that for all three rating agencies. And a critical piece of that was the policy resolutions that the council reviewed and approved, particularly to reserves and other balanced budget. And so the council continues to strengthen its fiscal policies and review these each year when it passes the budget, as Mr. Navarro said, and it also has added to that over the years, other policies. And council staff list its fiscal policies in the document. I won't go through them all in great detail today, but wanted to mention them because there are a whole suite of policies that help drive the county's and council's decisions when adopting a budget, but also to strengthen the fiscal health for the years to come. And so several of those policies relate to reserves, clearly. A big one to make sure that funding is available in years like this year when expenditures needs exceed resources because of an unforeseen circumstance. Another one is related to debt service. The council reviews debt service regularly. It's a large cost driver to county government's budget based on the capital budget needs. And so the council reviews both the spending affordability for general obligation debt, as well as the PAYGO policy so that debt maintains or remains stable. The council also has a policy related to other post-employment benefits, also OPEB. The council's achieved that by, in fiscal 15, starting to set aside the full actuarial cost each year in the budget. And this will help keep costs down in the future events when the trust fund will be able to support the PAYGO needed for OPEB. And then compensation sustainability is something the council recently took on in fiscal 19, where it requested that the county executive provide information if compensation increases exist in the budget, either because the tax revenues support that or other expenditures were reduced, noting that compensation is a large driver of cost of government as well. And then finally, fund balances are a part of a lot of the special funds to protect those, and those are key ones during the pandemic, which some of these special funds require revenues outside of tax-supported revenues, and in a year when the economy has changed significantly, these fund balances will be depleted, and of course the council approves those each year during the budget. And so the council's careful review, and as Ms. Michelson noted where necessary, modest changes or changes that are needed, is important during this pandemic and will be important to continue to strengthen the county's fiscal position coming out of the pandemic. So we can go ahead and move on to the next slide, Craig, thank you. So the fiscal plan, as Mr. Navarro said, is a snapshot in time. We just want to quickly reference that tool. It's an important tool to the council and to the county to provide a 6-year window of where the fiscal health is of the county, both in terms of resources, fiscal policies, and expenditures. The tool is updated twice a year, once in December and once in March when the county executive releases his recommended operating budget. And so this year the council did receive another update in December. And given the time frame, I will also note that's part of the reason we're coming back today is because we had the council was busy during the end of December or middle of December and not enough time to process all of the information given the pandemic. And so the important details that executive staff shared during the December update was that the total resources decreased by $101.5 million compared to the fiscal 21 approved budget. Total expenditures are estimated to exceed the approved budget by $194 million due to the pandemic primarily. There is some offset for federal aid, both from FEMA and from CARES funding. And then finally, the general fund reserves were estimated to end at 7.6%, or about 139.1 million less. And before I get into the analysis, we talk about for the gap in 21 and reserves and fiscal 22 gap. Council staff wants to note that these estimates were done to as Dr. Gales and Dr. Stoddard says, to provide expectation setting to the conversation. All of these numbers are based on the data council staff had when we did the analysis. And we're very appreciative of the effort from OMB to work with us on this. But obviously as data comes in and information changes, the gap and the information will change. But council staff did update some of the information from the fiscal 21 December update based on new information. So I just want to highlight a couple places we changed some of the, or updated the information based on new information. So the first one was that the council approved additional appropriations in December, and they just approved another appropriation this morning related to the conference center, so that we added $25.4 million to the expenditure side based on that. FEMA reimbursements, the second item is FEMA reimbursements. This item has been discussed a lot, but given the need to measure or to monitor expectations, council staff decided rather than going with the $103.6 million that executive staff assumed in the fiscal plan, which assumed over $200 million in submissions with a 50% reimbursement rate, council staff decided to stick with just what has been submitted to date at a 75% rate for operating expenses and 0% for pay differential based on updated information that we believe is based on the information that we have or have not received from FEMA yet. While that number is very conservative, we believe that's better to be conservative in this analysis. And then finally, we provided a savings plan based on the approved one in July to help offset some of the expenditures. And obviously, as Council President Hucker said, the county council did receive another savings plan recently from the executive that the council will then proceed through its normal processes when that comes. So we can go ahead and move on to the next slide. Thanks. So based on all of those updated information, council staff, again, just an estimate for where we are mid-January, have about $143.4 million gap in 21. That means our expenditures exceed revenues. That's all that simply means. And the gap should the gap remain, the county will use its general fund reserves to fill that gap because the county's budget, excuse me, needs to be balanced. And so that's how the gap is currently going to be closed, absent any additional resources or expenditure reductions, and absent any change in the gap. So given that the reserves will be used, council staff wanted to provide an understanding of where those reserves are going to look for fiscal 21 as we get ready to set up for fiscal 22. Again, as Ms. Michelson noted, the current policy is 10% for reserves, but as always, the council can review that given the pandemic situation. But nonetheless, we use different thresholds. So Craig, you can go on and move on to the next slide. Thank you. And so given the need, the council staff decided to emphasize the focus on resources here. So this table looks a little, it focuses on one column as opposed to what is in the packet. And so first I want to note the fiscal 20's reserves ended lower than we anticipated, which is why in order to get to 10%, the county needs more than just the gap that's currently estimated. That's why we're at 156.1 million. And it's about $50 million for every 1% in order to reach that. And as noted in this slide, either more revenues are needed, i.e. federal aid or other state aid, or additional estimates changed in taxes, or reduced expenditures are needed in order to reduce the amount of gap that's not only in 21 and therefore preserve reserves that are in 21. And as you can see, the various demarcations in order to achieve that through the resources needed. All right, Craig, you can move on to the next slide. Thank you. And finally, in terms of analysis, 21 budget is almost 6 months, more than 6 months old, 5 months to go almost. And the 22 budget is already being assembled by the county executive and his team, and the council will begin reviewing that momentarily in March and April. And so council staff wanted to give a sense of where things stand based on the fiscal update received in December. And rather than give a bunch of scenarios of where 22 could end up, we wanted just to provide 2 data points that were more or less extremes. The first data point is based on no growth. It's a level funding for all agencies, or MOE when needed. And it meets all fiscal policy considerations other than reserves. And given those considerations, currently council staff estimates there's about a $91 million gap in 22 for the start at a level funding. And that exists primarily because the revenues in 21 or 22 were written down because of the pandemic, and so there are fewer resources available in 22 to start with currently. And finally, the second data point we looked at was what if the council approves a budget that has growth based on the average pre-pandemic for all agencies and also fully funds reserves at 10%, which again is unlikely, but again for an extreme, and that number is a $400 million gap in 22. And so that gives the council an idea of the range and breadth of what is before them and before you all as you consider what resources are needed and what expenditure items are needed throughout the rest of 21 as we go into 22 in terms of the March recommended budget. And certainly all of this is subject to change, which is why we wanted to provide places where this is likely to change in the next 5 months and throughout. Pressures or relief from both the revenue expenditure side, and I'll be really brief here given the time. So both for revenues, the council staff report goes through all of the taxes and possible places where pressure or relief could occur based on the current known factors and situation. Council staff generally thinks the downside is greater or the chance for reduced revenues is greater because of the pandemic, but certainly given things such as the change in the charter amendment and others, there may be some upside to some things, but there's chances for additional revenue changes as we get closer to 22, and that may or may not make the budget more or less, but may make the budget more or less tighter in 21 and 22. Obviously, we've talked a lot about federal aid. Certainly, if the county receives additional federal aid that has no strings in terms of what it can be used for, and can be used to fund gaps that we currently have, that will aid or release a lot of the pressure that currently is on the budget. And then finally, economic development is the long game, but certainly focused on workforce development and training workers, and then general economic development and business development in the county will be a long-term pressure relief from the county in terms of additional generation of tax revenue. And then finally, on the expenditure side, again, most of these are pressures that will continue to play out. Ms. Navarro already spoke about the pandemic and the continued need and additional need. And as she also noted, I'll add that although it wasn't entirely mentioned, like there was already great need in the budget. And so those will continue to place expenditure pressures on the council. The council has spoken quite a bit about the pay differential, and council staff provides significant analysis in the report. But currently that has pay differential has cost about $78 million to date in fiscal 21. And so that's clearly a cost driver to the gap at the moment. And then finally, the last two are education and special funds. Both of these are unknowns at the moment, but certainly could place more pressures as students return to the MCPS school system, if there are additional funding needs for that in order to ensure safety and smooth operations. And then obviously the special funds, as I spoke about earlier, if there's need to fill in reserves there or gaps because of revenue loss in special funds from fees and fines, certainly that will create more expenditure pressures in 21 and 22. So with that, I'll turn it over to Mr. Howard, who will finish the rest of the presentation. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So for the last section of our presentation, we'll begin to look at different options and strategies to address budget gaps. And as has been mentioned, there are still many variables that could increase or decrease the gaps on either the revenue or expenditure side in FY21 and FY22. However, absent reductions in gaps, the council may need to be prepared with options and strategies that can begin to deal with long or short-term challenges depending on how the fiscal situation continues to evolve. And an important lesson learned from the Great Recession, as Ms. Navarro already mentioned, was that having a menu of options and strategies in advance really put the council and the executive in the best position to act when needed, and also provided decision makers with sufficient time to understand the pros and the cons of various options. So to begin that process, council staff has developed an initial list of options to reduce expenditures or to increase revenues. It's important to note that none of these options are simple or without impact, and none are actions that the council would want to take without careful deliberation. Additionally, it's not an exhaustive list of all options, but focuses primarily on areas that can have a significant fiscal impact, as well as areas that have been reviewed by the council in the past. And as such, any of the options in the staff report that we'll mention would require further analysis and research to estimate specific short-term or long-term savings, and the council staff team, of course, is prepared to work on that as needed. So in beginning by looking at expenditure options, it's important first to understand the framework of what drives government spending. And so I want to start by emphasizing a couple of takeaways from the Council's ongoing review of cost of government, which began back in 2016. The first is that there are several factors that drive spending or limit revenue that are outside of the county's control. And so there's not much you can do about them in any given budget year. These include taxing authority, maintenance of effort laws, debt service on bonds already issued, and things like that. There are several factors within the county's control, and these primarily include the scope of county services, employee compensation and benefits, and workforce size. And third, employee compensation costs comprise about 80% of all agency expenditures. And so since government is a labor-intensive enterprise, the long-term sustainability of county operating budgets is in part dependent on maintaining a balance between compensation cost growth and revenue growth. So given that framework, we broke expenditure options down into short-term and long-term, with short-term options shown on the slide, and these typically consist of one-time fixes to address a current year budget problem. So the first of these is a savings plan, which of course the council is very familiar with. The county has already received and approved its first FY20 savings plan and recently received the second. And of course, savings plans can range in size from very small to very large, depending on what is submitted. The second short-term option is more specific to this particular fiscal challenge, and that would be ending the pay differential. As mentioned by Mr. Smith, there's lots of data in the staff report on the pay differential, but ending the differential would immediately reduce the projected expenditure gap by about $45 million. And the last short-term option is furloughs, which provide a temporary one-time savings in personnel costs. The county last implemented furloughs as a cost savings measure in FY11, and at that time, the council chose to implement progressive furloughs, which required higher paid employees to take more furlough days and lower paid employees to take fewer. Moving on to the long-term options, these typically provide smaller initial savings, but greater long-term savings. And as such, they predominantly focus on compensation costs by either reducing the cost per employee or the number of employees. And as part of the staff report, we've included links to a variety of reports and presentations from council staff and as well as the Office of Legislative Oversight that provide important background data and details on many of these different options. So the expenditure areas are listed on this slide, and I won't go through each of them in great detail. There's a whole slew of options in the staff report, but I'll just say a couple overview comments. So the options start with salaries and wages, which represent about 70 to 75% of tax-supported expenditures within compensation costs for the county government each year. And it also includes the different employee benefit costs that do play a role in driving the long-term costs. And these include retirement and pension, active employee group insurance costs, retiree health insurance, or what we usually refer to as OPEB. And I do want to note that some of the options in the report are things that the council has routinely discussed, such as asking MCPS to align its group insurance cost share with that of county government. And there's other items that have been reviewed in the past but have not been brought up in recent years. And the last area we list on this slide is workforce size. And reducing workforce size can be accomplished in a couple of different ways. The first is by increasing efficiency, or essentially providing the same level of services with fewer people. And we've included some information in the staff report on the county executive's efforts to accomplish this via the cost efficiency study group, which is an ongoing exercise, I should mention. And the second option is to reduce workforce size via layoffs or a reduction in force. And the council and the executive have historically only done this as an option of very last resort in extremely dire situations. And of course, a way of avoiding needing to find expenditure reductions, as Mr. Smith mentioned, is to find ways to increase revenue. And it's important to note that revenue options would not solve any immediate FY21 fiscal problems unless we're talking about revenue received from the federal government. But instead, these are more options that could address gaps in FY22 and beyond. So while the county generally has very limited tax room, which the council has discussed in the past, there are still some things that the council could consider with varying levels of magnitude. First, with property taxes, as Mr. Smith mentioned, based on the new charter amendment passed in November, Real property tax revenues will grow with the county's assessable base, even if the council does not vote to increase the rate. So this could provide greater revenues going forward. However, it is important to know that a decrease in assessments, if that were to occur, would result in fewer revenues than under the previous charter limit. Additionally, as part of the FY22 budget, the council will need to make decisions within this new structure on different tax credits, which could impact revenues either upwards or downwards. The other options include the energy tax, which is an area the county has adjusted previously to address budget gaps and could be an option again in the future. Recordation tax, which the council discussed potential changes during its approval of the growth and infrastructure policy and is an area that the council may return to. Fees and fines represent a relatively small portion of the county's revenue picture, but could be used to help stabilize special funds by providing additional revenue for those and or to generate a small amount of additional revenue for the general fund. And the last area is that the council could always request additional taxing authority from the state to kind of change the dynamic of what you are able to do in that area. And so I'll end the presentation with kind of re-emphasizing the key discussion points and takeaways that Ms. Michelson mentioned and hopefully have come across as part of our presentation. First, that the county is projected to have sizable gaps and absent any significant changes to revenues or expenditures. These could be around $143 million in FY21 and at least $91 million beginning in FY22, which again assumes level funding for agencies, so no new programs or pay increases or initiatives. Second is that fiscal policies should drive budget decision making, and the council should consider whether any policies need to be reviewed and updated in advance of the FY22 budget. In particular, decisions on the reserve policy will be important. Third, existing budget gaps provide caution for additional spending until more is known regarding potential changes in resources, particular actual FEMA reimbursement decisions and additional federal funding. And last is just that the council may need to be prepared with a multitude of options and strategies to address potential fiscal challenges depending on how things play out. And so with that, Mr. President, I will close out of the presentation and turn it back over to you for questions and comments.
If I could just jump in before we go to questions, just to give a quick highlights on what you got on the savings plan, which came late Friday afternoon. You've already heard about the gaps. The county executive submitted late Friday a savings plan that would reduce expenditures in FY21 by $25 million. Of that, 16.4 in operating budget savings and 8.6 in CIP savings. He also indicated that the school system would be able to participate with a $25 million contribution that would be unused fund that would be rolled into FY22. There are, I think, a number of questions about the savings plan, which the council can explore now or at a later time, including, whether it is the appropriate size savings plan. Because we got it late Friday, staff is just embarking on our analysis of it. We believe that much of what's in here may not have a service impact and may be savings that already occurred. But it's going to be really important for us to do a more careful look and let you know if there are any reductions in here that will have a service impact so that you could look at them. And a good example is in HHS, there are some reductions which were submitted in the summer, you rejected, and they've been submitted again. So we know you're going to want to have a conversation about that. And, finally, as has been referenced earlier, we do have this issue of the pay differential and how that will relate to the savings plan. And as the Council Chair Navarro noted, all of these things are very much interrelated. So we'll be trying to pull them all together with you as we continue on this. With that, I will turn it back to you, Mr. Council President.
Thank you, Ms. Michelson. We call on Councilmember Reamer.
Thank you very much. Well, it's a very frustrating situation that we're in. It's also a very strange situation. We've had this surge of federal funding that we have been working hard to get out into the community to prevent recession, to manage the COVID crisis. And at the same time, we know we're having a real problem with our local revenues, and we just don't know what to expect as far as additional federal assistance. But, I think from a fiscal standpoint, it would be terrific if the county executive and the council could work together, around a set of principles. That's been a rocky road so far. We've had tax increases that we've had to not embrace, and just a lot of really questionable decision making. I think fundamentally reflecting political priorities of the executive that I think a lot of us are struggling with. I'm really surprised that this savings plan did not include the promised change in the differential pay. We have been hearing for months, literally for months, that the executive branch is renegotiating that. And it's never been authorized by the council. We've been told that it's being renegotiated. We were told several times the executive branch recognized that they don't have the authority to continue funding it after the expiration of the CRF money at the end of the calendar year. Yet it's continuing. We were promised that it would be changed in the new savings plan. It was not. I sense that there's an effort to run the clock out and just keep that $4 million going out the door every week. I think that's the real agenda, is to just keep that money going out the door. And, that is the biggest fiscal issue that we've got right now. And we have to get this situation resolved because it is profoundly problematic. We have not spent anywhere near this much money supporting our local small businesses. We've not spent anywhere near this much money with rental assistance. The distortion of priorities is it's such an epic scale at this point. I think we all agree that hazard pay is needed, or at least was needed. I think Park and Planning, as was detailed on the 7th State blog, they came up with a pretty reasonable way to handle this, and the executive branch did not. And so, I just heard that there was some talk about a closed session. I haven't heard further details about that, but I will say that talk about a tax increase to make up for this is just really problematic. So thank you.
Councilmember, just to respond to the point you just made, yeah, I'm working with staff to identify times, ideally later this week, when we could have a closed session to look into differential pay. I will say Mr. Madaleno and the executive branch have sent us over a few different scenarios that I've shared with Ms. Michelson and Mr. Howard, and they've responded and run some numbers, and I'm eager to share all those with colleagues as we go into that closed session. So I think we'll see an end or an adjustment to the differential pay quite soon, but Mr. Madaleno's been, engaged at that level. Councilmember Jawando is next.
Thank you, Mr. President. And thank you, staff, for the analysis. Just a couple of specific questions to whomever can answer them most accurately, either in the administration or on our staff. What is the current reserve level right now, today, January 19th, 2021?
I'll get it started, and then if the executive staff would like to add, I'll defer to them. But there's no way to know today because it's not like a bank account. So I think the current reserve level is at 7.1% as estimated. in the staff packet. That's where we'll be in. I do not have a number for today because in order to do that, they have to go through accounting. So,
okay, so
Mr. Covio is also here. So again, it's better to, but council staff always thinks about it in terms of where we're headed. But I defer to executive staff if they have an actual number for January 19, 2021.
Mr. Covio, you're on mute. I was waiting for you to appear. You're on mute.
I'm okay. Sorry about that. We don't calculate it every day. We look at our cash and cash equivalents every day. They're more than 10% of the total budget for the year. But we don't calculate the reserve amount every year because we would have to be doing a rolling calculation of how much we're spending and everything, and that has been changing very frequently.
Right.
Recently also.
So the 7 point, well, just give me your best, okay, if we can't do the date, I understand it's not an account labeled reserves, but you said 7.1%. It was just give me a sense, because it's often said, I just feel like the public, we say the state has $1 billion. I know we were working towards $500 million. It's less than that. We've spent some of it. There's in and out because of FEMA and CARES money, just so ballpark it for me at best you can where we are right now.
Sure. I think the packet that Mr. Smith and Mr. Howard put together is accurate in the low 7% range if nothing changes.
Got it. Okay. Thank you.
Okay.
And how much money have we submitted to FEMA and how much have we received? Mr. Madaleno, maybe, or I don't know who's.
We put in at this point $90 million worth of requests for reimbursement. We are on the verge, probably between later this week and next week. That number will be, I believe, closer to $130 million submitted. Okay. So the very first submission, which was for a little bit more than $31 million, we got the official response last week that we'll get the full 75%, which is a little bit more than $23 million.
Okay.
But we're doing it in tranches. They've only made the formal determination on the first tranche.
So step one was good. We got what we thought we would get, and we're submitting more. Okay, got it. That's helpful.
And I would note that our congressional delegation has asked FEMA to put in place for Maryland the policy that they adopted for New York, which was a 100% reimbursement and not just the 75% reimbursement. And I know that's fluid with the change of administrations, but the Trump administration made the determination about the 100%. So we're hopeful that will become a national policy.
Yep, I did read something about that, and that would obviously make a lot of sense. Okay, great. And then the savings plan that was sent over, we just got the rough estimate, $25 million, and then another $25 million rollover from MCPS. Is that correct, Mr. Madaleno?
Yes. Okay. It is. And when added together, that's $135 million worth of savings that the Elrich administration has proposed during fiscal year 21, which would be a record amount of money for the county government and would mark the second time during his 3 years in office that the county executive has had to put in that degree of a savings plan. And I would point out that it does not touch one penny of our contribution to our employee health trust fund, otherwise known as the OPEB trust fund. Unlike the savings plans in 18 and 19, which both were dependent upon very large reductions in the OPEB trust fund. So this has been reductions in our expenditures.
And the $135 million is total between the both savings plans, correct?
Right. What we submitted in July, and what you approved as a result of our submission in July, plus what we're proposing now.
Right. Okay, that's helpful. And all, I know we'll have further discussions. I appreciate the briefing. Look forward to our deep dive from our staff. I just say as a general premise, as I've read through and I've spoken to the executive and I've spoken to colleagues and our staff, we obviously want to protect the critical services for our residents, particularly related to COVID. I know everyone agrees on that. We'll have the separate conversation in closed session hopefully soon about the pay differential. We do need to figure that out. We are having simultaneous conversations at the federal and state levels of money coming in that we need, that we've asked for, that should be provided. I'm happy to say from the last savings plan, it's a little more rosy as far as what we think will happen as opposed to this one. So I think before we take any drastic steps, we should give time for those things to play out. I also think, as a general premise, as with the state, we should be prepared to go down on our savings plan, or if not eliminate the contribution in this year, and be able to use that money in an emergency. But obviously, we need to look at I agree with colleagues that this holistic picture is important. So I appreciate the analysis so far. I look forward to continuing the conversation. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Council Member. Mr. Madaleno, I'm probably remiss. I didn't invite you to have the opportunity to respond to the staff report. And I would add just a caveat question of my own is I was surprised to not see the EDC given the opportunity to participate in the savings plan. Mr. Madaleno.
Thank you very much, President Hucker, members of the council. Appreciate the opportunity to give a brief reply on behalf of the Elbridge administration. I want to thank, in particular, the staff for their report. It's always nice to work with your staff. I know I was bugging both Ms. Michelson and Mr. Howard repeatedly over the weekend with text messages, and I think we all enjoy the collaborative working relationship. I want to, in particular, thank Councilmember Navarro for her opening comments. I know the county executive who shared the last recession with you on the county council has the same memories of what happened in 2008 to 2010 and what worked and what didn't. And I assure you all, he wants the collaborative working relationship with all of you individually and as a body. And as you know from all of the various meetings he's been having with you, clearly everything is interrelated. The fiscal policies impact our requirements, the actions of the federal government and the state government in both providing us assistance, providing assistance to our residents, and the various spending mandates that we have are all interrelated. Not funding OPEB in order to balance the budget creates an obligation for the future. Overextending ourselves obviously could impact our bond rating, which costs money. So all of these things we know are interrelated. I want to start by letting you all know how the FY22 from this point forward, the FY22 budget process will be different than other cycles that you've experienced before. The state has announced an extension of the deadline for employers to pay and submit withholding to the state. Instead of on a monthly basis, it will be until April 15th. For all of us, you know that February distribution is key for how we build out the budget moving forward. As a result of these changes, the February distribution could be very, very different, just like we experienced last spring with the May and June distribution, and then experienced this enormous August distribution of income taxes. So as the executive assembles his budget, this executive will not have that incredibly important data point, unlike all previous executives. So I just want to put that out there for all of you, for your staff, for the community to understand that we will have a potentially a more volatile information standpoint, not necessarily a revenue standpoint, but we will not know as much as we often do when an executive is finalizing his budget. Plus, you know, every year our budget requirement is before the budget submission requirement is before the General Assembly finishes. this may be an unusual year for the General Assembly to make appropriations. So we may be, again, at a loss of information for both what is going to be flowing to us, to our residents, as a result of the state budget, since their enactment deadline will be several weeks after we have to submit our budget, unless they move forward because of the health situation, like they wound up doing last year. So that's another important data point that will be different. We don't know what changes they will make in mandates. I expect, I pray, I hope Councilmember Rice, as the chair of the Education Committee of MACO, is already intimately involved in the negotiations around some of the state mandates, and how what we've always expected in the past would create such unusual disruption in school funding for every county that the General Assembly and the counties need some resolution to smooth out what's going to happen in how we meet our maintenance of effort obligations. And of course, we're expecting, hopefully sometime today, tomorrow, an understanding of how the state is going to give out the federal aid to school systems in particular that were given to the states as a result of the bill that passed at the end of December at the federal level. And of course, there's news reports that as early as this evening, the exact text of the Biden-Harris administration's new relief bill will come out, and we will know how they're going to propose distributing the $350 billion that they have suggested that they will have in there to support first responders and the full panoply of services that a local government provides, in addition to more money for transit, in addition to more money for education, whether it be K-12, childcare, the community college. So there will be a lot of additional information coming out of the federal government. Who knows how quickly they will move in order to get something done. We would hope as quickly as possible. So I just bring that up because there are going to be a lot of items out of our control as we try to put together the FY22 budget and continue to resolve the FY21 budget. I do want to reiterate that with the $135 million savings plans that we have submitted, that we are on target. Again,
I'm not hearing anything.
I'm sorry if I froze.
You're good.
Oh, all right.
You're back.
It somehow, sorry, it seemed to also shut off my video. So we're happy to work with MZEDC to actually have them put up some proposals, but when you add everything together and what Montgomery College and the Park and Planning Commission have already taken in reductions earlier in July, again, this is a record amount of savings for any administration to propose. And with that, I will.
What about? I had a question about whether EDC was. I was surprised EDC wasn't invited to the opportunity to participate in the savings plan that you had sent us.
I am happy to return to EDC to see if they would be willing to put up some proposed savings.
Thank you. Do you have any comments on the governor's budget that he released today, or the sad little stimulus package that he released last weekend in response to the statewide event that we had organized?
So I have not. I have not seen the governor's budget proposal as of yet. If you got something already today, I don't know. I'd been trying to find out what they were going to propose, because it should be the press information usually comes out today. So I know in working with Ms. Wenger, they have been unable to get some information out from the state as early as possible. You know that County Executive Elrich stands firmly with you and your colleagues, Councilmember Hucker, about the need for the local state relief plan, and believes, as you had suggested in your earlier comments, that is an important way for the state to utilize its resources to help the community. So he is with you all on that proposal.
Terrific. Thank you. Councilmember Friedson.
Thank you, Council President, and I appreciate this conversation. Unfortunately, I feel like it's deja vu all over again. We are still waiting for a plan. We're still waiting for the type of fiscal leadership I think that we need from the county executive, and we have yet to get it. I appreciate the fact that there is an interest in working collaboratively and that there is continuous talk about needing to address these issues. Up until this point, however, we've seen neither. And I'm a bit stunned by the idea that this is that we're patting ourselves on the back here for the most amount of savings that have ever been proposed in the history of the county. I'd like to learn more about that because it doesn't comport with the fiscal realities of the Great Recession, nor the fiscal realities that we're facing today. And we don't need to be the best ever. We need to meet the moment that we're in. And right now we are nowhere close to being able to meet the fiscal challenges that we currently face. I imagine that the fuzzy math that is being presented, that this is the greatest amount of cuts in the history of the county, is not including the fact that in the fiscal year 2011 budget, the county executive proactively said, ignore the budget I just sent you, and sent a new budget where from all accounts, from my awareness, almost $1 billion in cuts were required. And those weren't accounting cuts, budget cuts, which is all we've really seen for the most part here. They were real cuts. They hit bone. They were tough. And I'll be honest with you, I didn't agree with all of those when I was a resident. I'm sure I wouldn't have agreed with all of them if I were a county council member at the time. But I give great credit to County Executive Leggett for having the type of leadership to take the type of criticism and to be willing to do the job that was required at the time to get the county through the crisis. And we're now better off as a result of it. So I will just say that, that it's not much in the way of savings in terms of the magnitude of $143.7 million in a gap that we're facing, and absolutely no plan whatsoever. We have yet to receive a plan. We've heard a lot of reasons why we can't have a plan. We've heard a lot of excuses for what we're waiting on before we receive that plan. But up to this point, this county council has not received a proposal to change the fiscal plan, any specific tangible ideas of what needs to be changed, a plan for how to get back to where we were in the time period that it would take, for instance, for reserves or for OPEB or for anything else. And the moment needs a lot more than what we're getting right now. The county needs a lot more than what we're getting right now. And it sure does feel like an abdication of executive leadership and fiscal responsibility up to this point. So I just wanted to point that out. We're also getting a lot of mixed messages. On the one hand, every time we hear something, we get told that there's going to be a deadline. We get told that we're going to get information at a certain date. And then it changes or it never happens. Or what we get is completely different from what we're told. We had a savings plan in the summer. We were told that it wasn't as big as it might have been in order to meet the challenges that we were in. But don't worry, there's going to be another savings plan moving forward. And in light of criticism that savings plan wasn't enough to meet the challenges that we faced, we have a savings plan that is far less than what was proposed in the summer. It's just, to me, it's frustrating. It's mind-boggling. I can't imagine as a county resident when you hear these types of mixed messages and want to find out what is the county strategy to get through this crisis, to be able to protect services, to keep the county in a sustainable path moving forward. We don't have a very good answer up to this point, and that is not meeting the moment that we're in, and is going to put us in an incredibly difficult position to meet the moments that follow. I've said before, I will say again, that hope is not a fiscal strategy. Hope is not going to pay for the gap that we're going to face. Hope is not going to provide services to residents that desperately need it, and waiting for FEMA reimbursements and waiting for the state to make a decision, or waiting for the Biden administration to come in and save us. It's just not leadership. It's not a fiscal strategy. It is not going to help us get through the crisis that we're in. So I have some specific questions. Number one, of the $16.4 million in the operating budget as part of the savings plan, how much of that specifically are actual cuts to actual spending that would have happened but for the savings plan? Meaning that lapsing a position that's currently vacant is not spending that was going to happen. So how much of that is actual reductions in real spending that will save the county money this fiscal year?
So Councilmember Friedson, if it's okay, and I was remiss in doing this, you've already heard from Mr. Covey, who's the director of the finance department. Ms. Bryant is on the line as well, the acting director and our nominee for the Office of Management and Budget, and several of the other leaders in OMB. And I am hopeful that Ms. Bryant will answer that question.
Good afternoon, members. I'd love to try to answer that question, Councilmember Friedson. There are a lot of lapse associated with this budget, of which some is related to protocols that have been put in place due to COVID. And we right now do have a hiring freeze in place that also has an exemption process. But a lot of the lapse reductions that you see here, or the assumed lapse, are because we are denying some positions that have been requested to be filled in areas that are not as of higher need and are not directly dealing with the pandemic response. So what you see in lapse is real savings. It may not be predicated on something that we would have done in a normal situation, but since we are in a period of time where we're responding to a pandemic, and that is one of the county's primary focus, to make sure that the residents have the services that they need in this time of uncertainty, that these are real savings, because otherwise people have been requesting, or departments have been requesting, to fill these positions, of which part of the management of our fiscal situation is to scale back on filling positions because we have a hiring freeze in place.
Okay, I appreciate it. If council staff and executive staff, I know we haven't had a lot of time to review this, could actually get a real number, not just accounting budget savings, which is different than actual savings, but if we could get a report of that, I think it would be helpful, because in any budget, we all know that there is unspent money, and to take that and declare victory on that as an actual amount of significant savings is just not serious or real. Okay. There was a restructuring work group. This was part of the grand plan that we've been hearing about. It started to feel a lot like the Trump healthcare plan or infrastructure week. We were hearing about there was going to be this significant restructuring effort that was taking place by bringing all of the key stakeholders together. That then, there was a $10 million phantom savings in the budget that turned out it was illegal, and so we rejected that. The latest iteration of that became this restructuring work group that we learned about, that was presented to us, if I recall, as part of the savings plan in July. If I recall, that was a $90,000 expenditure that we were paying for a consultant to find 100 vacancies, which when you think about the Great Recession and 1,000 positions that were cut out of the county. I don't recall a consultant being paid $90,000 at that point, but this one being 100. I just wanted to get an update on that. It was mentioned in the savings plan, but nothing has come of it. It's been months. My understanding was that the engagement was through the end of the calendar year. When should we expect to know about those savings? Again, this is a goalpost that moved because I was told that we were going to have real savings this year. At least that's what it was presented to us. But it seemed to be indicated in this savings plan that the idea is to cut those positions for next fiscal year as part of next budget. So could you just update us on that?
You'll be happy to know that we spent several hours this morning with all the stakeholders actually going over the progress that we've made in working with county leadership as well as our partners in this endeavor at McGeo. So we have had consistent weekly meetings with all of the stakeholders to make progress on this. So our goal is to get something done as quickly as possible. But when you're trying to work together between the county management and our other workers and their representatives, it has been a slower process. But you will see the fruits of that as soon as we can give it to you.
I appreciate that. You can understand our confusion.
Absolutely.
Because the county executive is uniquely positioned, given his prior relationships, to be able to manage this. But yet we had to hire a consultant. We're actually spending money to not really actually save money this fiscal year as we're headed towards a fiscal cliff. And so it just seems like a pretty bizarre dynamic. And the ultimate result of it is a number of vacancies being eliminated that seem pretty inadequate given the magnitude of our fiscal challenges. But I look forward to seeing the results of that process and share your frustration with how long it has taken and how much taxpayer money we've actually spent on it.
And then one of the things that the county executive has expressed great frustration with, and in fact, in his budget submission this year, did try to fix, it's one thing to eliminate positions as happened at the end of the last recession, but at that point, the prior administration did add a whole bunch of contractual positions into HHS. So I don't know what is gained necessarily by eliminating full-time positions only to backfill them with people that we go out and contract with a firm to give us the people to do those services. So we've been trying to dig ourselves out of that situation and not do that sort of maneuver, which I think with your keen eye for fiscal issues, you may not appreciate if that was an initiative of the Eldridge administration.
I appreciate that, and it's a totally legitimate point. I think, unfortunately, what we've mostly seen are these issues that are raised as talking points, but not necessarily the actual results that lead to savings. Less is more, we get more is somehow less, and we need to somehow get to a point where we are finding the efficiencies that were promised, but it's a legitimate point. Is the county executive proposing any specific substantive changes to the fiscal plan at this point on the different elements of the fiscal plan, whether it be reserve levels, OPEB, et cetera?
At this point, we are not. I feel firm in saying there's not going to be a proposal about changing the reserve policy because of its importance to certainly the rating agencies and to our bondholders. I think we are open to that conversation around the retiree health care. As far as when do we start using some of the money that's in the trust fund to pay for the ongoing pay-as-you-go costs on an annual basis, and what is our ultimate funding goal for the trust fund, recognizing the trust fund, the retiree healthcare trust fund, fundamentally is different than the pension trust fund, which is seeking which has a higher funding need, because it is seeking to do actual income replacement. So there is the openness to have that conversation with all of you and certainly with your staff.
As long as
and our employee partners.
Right. As long as the proposal isn't that the federal government is going to have a Medicare for all policy and we're going to bank on that, I'd be open to that conversation as well. Okay, so
I think we.
I just a couple of last questions, Mr. President. Is the county executive planning to propose a tax increase in the fiscal 22 budget in order to make up for the revenue gap that has been discussed here today by staff?
I have not had that conversation where he has said to me, Rich, absolutely not. I would think that would be the very last thing he would think of doing. So I wouldn't say that is on the table for him. And I would stress that last year, the property tax proposal that he made to all of you was to fully fund the Board of Education's request. It wasn't for county government. It was for an education supplement for the state, for the school board's full request last year. So it wasn't one to broadly expand the county government, but it was to meet the obligations that he believed the school system has towards providing assistance and supports to all of the children of our school system.
Yeah, I'll just close by saying there are still more questions and answers about where we're heading. I have no idea how you put together a fiscal year 22 budget when you haven't come up with a plan of how we're going to address the fiscal year 21 fiscal challenges that we're in. This is a real serious problem. We're 10 months in. There's still no plan for how to pay for differential pay, whether it was the right negotiation, the wrong negotiation, whether it should have been changed sooner or not. That doesn't matter. What does matter is there never was a plan. There still isn't a plan for how we're actually going to pay for it. On FEMA reimbursement, still not a plan for that. We're still now seeing, well, maybe 100% instead of 75%. And we need a plan for all of these things. You've said that there is no intention here to change the fiscal plan when it comes to reserve levels. However, you've put forward proposals that leave us in a position where we are changing our reserve levels to 7.1% from 10% or maybe even lower. And so if we're not changing the plan, it's even worse because we're then not following the plan and we have no plan in order to temporarily not follow it and get back to it. And so not making a decision is a decision. And right now it's the wrong decision. And we really need fiscal leadership coming from the county executive. I don't blame you. I don't blame Ms. Bryant. I don't blame anybody on the executive staff. I don't blame any of the bargaining units. I fully believe the executive responsibility lies with the county executive, and we need his leadership now more than ever. Just like County Executive Leggett showed in the last fiscal crisis, we need that type of leadership now. So far, we have not seen it. Thank you, Mr. President.
Councilmember Rice. Oh, Rich.
I would just reiterate, we have been working diligently to assemble all of the requests for FEMA and to put it in. So it's not like we haven't had a plan. In fact, one of the things that we have submitted more reimbursement than any other regional government. We've already gotten more back from FEMA than we ever have in a prior situation. In a prior set of requests. So we will have $130 million worth of requests sitting on FEMA's desk by the end of the month for the Biden administration to be making a determination with a fresh set of eyes and a FEMA administrator, at least the nominee, who's been doing this for the city of New York.
Right. Can you just say that again? Because I keep hearing it from state delegates and members of the public and others. You've asked for and you've received more reimbursement in terms of dollars from FEMA than any other jurisdiction you're aware of. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Councilmember Rice.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. So, Mr. Malino, you brought up education a number of times. Let me say this. I'm very concerned about the level of reduction with education, understanding how much work needs to be done with our kids. We talk constantly about the summer slide. There will be a COVID slide that results from our children being out of school for what likely will have been at least a minimum of 1 year of in-person learning. that's going to have significant effects, especially on our smaller and younger children. So much so that to the end that you're talking about, I'm actually talking with Delegate Solomon, who's on the Appropriations Committee and on the Education Subcommittee there, primarily around what more the state can do to help to fund LEAs, our local education associations throughout the state, when it comes to standing up a new model of reinforcement of learning over the summer months to prepare them for entering the school into the fall. And so to that end, now is not the time to back out money of education. It's the time to sink money into it, to make sure that our kids have all they need to bring themselves back up to speed, to be ready to re-enter the school, ready to learn and at grade level. So there's a lot of work to be done. Couple that with what we need to do with COVID, with Kerwin, and it's very clear that there's more reinforcements that are necessary to really support education. To that end, I also see that when it comes to health and human services reductions on the savings plan, I see things like our street outreach network. I see things like our BIPOC health initiatives that are out there and health program. And I'm just wondering what the thought was there when we're talking about our children that are at risk at an all-time high, why we would look at reducing funding to organizations that are out there focusing on the disparities that we continue to see, that we have claimed as a county is a health emergency, coupled with now a global pandemic on top of it. Keep in mind, we did that before COVID. And then when it comes to our at-risk youth, Councilmember Albernos just today introduced a bill dealing with ghost guns and the challenges and the scourge that we're seeing in our communities with our children that are at promise and really getting challenged when it comes to constructive things to do, why we would take money from programs that are actually trying to fight that scourge that we're seeing in our communities.
To get to the specific response of your questions about the savings plan, I was hoping that either Ms. Bryant or Mr. Waters would be able to address that issue.
My apologies. Yes, I think it's best to put this whole savings plan, including HHS items, into context. I do believe there should have been some detailed reports on details on the items that were sent, and I'm just looking for that particular item because I don't have that information off the top of my head. But this was a list of options, of course, of many that were placed into the budget. I'm not sure that this particular item is of one of where they have savings because they have a limited number of children who can be together in certain areas because of the pandemic. It's capacity. The capacity is not what, of course, it once was or could be during this environment. So some of the savings that you see in HHS and in other departments are primarily the result of capacity that we can't go over because of the social distancing aspect. So that I don't think will have some big impact on the program itself. I do understand that we do want to be able to help our children move along because this has been a long battle that all of us have faced, and particularly children being impacted in their learning environments and in environments that are set up to help them to learn. So what the executive tried to make sure of in his recommendations is that these were things that didn't have significant impacts on the programs in which were recommended for some further reduction, that this is natural occurring savings because of limitations of sizes of the programs in which we could implement or administer in this type of environment.
So just to echo, go ahead, Mr. Waters.
Oh, sorry. Just to echo what Ms. Bryant was saying, many of the programs that are being proposed to be reduced for HHS are being reduced because there's an updated projection on the number of participants for a program. And as a result, there could be some savings from that. In other instances, other funding streams have been identified that could fund those services for some of the individuals. In other instances, it could be that the need for the services have lessened because of COVID. So some of the in-person services that are that we had anticipated being provided aren't being provided, and instead can be provided more cost effectively in a remote environment, virtually. And so we're going to be we'll be happy to go over with your staff, each of those items and the impact. I believe we included a report that was submitted to council staff regarding what the impact of each of those individual items are. And when we were reviewing them with the executive, we did review them with the executive in terms of which ones were service impacting and which ones were not service impacting.
So this is Groundhog Day, because we went through this last time with our savings plan, and we ended up reinstituting many of these same sort of similar cuts in a non-global pandemic year, in a post-George Floyd era year. And so it's just mind-boggling to me that seeing where we are, seeing the challenges that we face, seeing that we're adding money to all of our BIPOC health organizations here in this county. We just got a briefing from the Asian American Health Initiative that Councilmember Alvarez led for HHS, and we were talking about additional money that they would need to be able to fund to stand up additional things. How we can then in the same breath say, oh, but we're going to take away money here. What it should be is redirecting. I certainly understand that if there is some cost savings that we can garner from the lack of in-person, but I don't think those conversations have been had. And you know why? Because they weren't had last time. Because then when I go and I pick up the phone and I ask Street Outreach Network, or I ask AHP or AHI or LHI, do you indeed feel comfortable with these cuts and think that they're not going to have impacts? What do you think they're going to tell me? They're going to tell me that they are, because it's the same thing that we did before. And so I'm just confused about why we continue to go down this pathway for very small amounts, right? But that have huge impacts and things that we're focused on right now. How in the world can we talk about racial equity and social justice and talk about these things at the forefront and saying that they matter and that they're a priority for us, and then we cut funding from the Street Outreach Network? If anything, we should be ramping up. We should be giving them every single little spare change and dollar and nickel and dime we have to make sure that we keep our kids from making these bad decisions that end up putting themselves at risk. When I see behavioral health and I see mental health stand-ups within HHS, where we just had a congressman who lost his son to suicide, understanding the challenges and the mental health and stress that our kids are under, it just does not look good on its face. And then to say that we're going to do this and, well, we think that there's cost savings that we can possibly attain. There are some things we shouldn't touch. And so when I hear Councilmember Friedson talk about leadership, I have to say that this is a time in which you have to delineate and decide what is important to you truly, that you want to send a message to the community is that you're going to save money on, and what you're not. And what I've said before, and said it plenty of times and got flack for it before, I'm not for giving a person a raise in a time in which we have folks that are struggling to try and keep their kids alive, to try and keep their kids safe, to try and keep food on the table, to try and make sure that they can still go to a doctor. That's not what I'm about. And so I'll say it again, and you can flame me on Twitter, on Facebook or Instagram or wherever. I don't care. Because at the end of the day, what I do care about is making sure that there's fairness and equity and social justice in terms of the decisions that we make, and this savings plan doesn't represent that.
Councilmember Navarro.
Thank you, Mr. President. Actually, I was going to make similar comments that similar to what Councilmember Rice just stated regarding the HHS particular proposal. I do think, and obviously it's with us now, but I do think that we need to reinstate that, and the list of needs is just so long that if indeed there were particular savings identified because of, lapse or whatever, we need to reinvest that and so much more. So I do believe that was a major misstep because it just sends a very strange message. And, whatever, the whole thing about budgets being a moral document is very true today. So I would agree with this issue of HHS. The only other thing I just wanted to also reinforce is that, at the end of the day, yes, the reserves are there for specifically this moment, like what we're going through right now. I don't think there's any dispute that that's why they're there. I mean, that's why we worked so hard to make sure that we would at least reach a 10% level, which in some circles, there's debate whether that should be the right level. The real concern, or I guess the real challenge, is that we do need to come together to figure out what is going to be the plan to replenish that, right? So when I keep talking about the fact that we have to it's kind of like walking and chewing gum at the same time, we have to address the urgent needs that we have in front of us vis-a-vis our fiscal challenges, but we also have to find some way of agreeing on what are going to be those fiscal policies going forward. And I remember something Councilmember Friedson said about, Executive Leggett making some decisions that he may not have agreed with. Well, the truth of the matter is that the council equally put on the table some very significant, fiscal options that had not been proposed by the executive. And so we worked together, but it wasn't as if we just rubber stamped whatever came through. The council also had to take a look at things because we realized that what had been proposed was not going to go far enough to get us on the right track. And that is what I'm trying to say here. What I'm trying to say is that, we have got to get to work to lay out what those fiscal policies are going to be and where is it going to take us, and be serious about the intention here. And I want to echo some of my colleagues have said. The truth of the matter is that given who we are, 2021, who Montgomery County is, and the fact that I personally believe that we still have not even scraped the surface of the needs of the most vulnerable, we have to prioritize that. We have no choice, because the aftermath of this pandemic is just going to be so severe. And whatever decisions we're making in prioritizing, we have got to prioritize the needs of the most vulnerable and the folks right now who have no jobs, who are sick. Every single day we hear of people that we know or constituents that are right now connected to a ventilator, may not make it, single moms who've lost their husbands, who now are there to fend for their children and don't know how to put food on the table. I mean, the stories are heartbreaking. These are not the folks that come to testify or write to us. That's not who they are, but they are out there and they are suffering in ways that many of us can't even imagine. And so I take that responsibility very seriously as we have these conversations about, fiscal policies and targets and things like that. Make no mistake, we've got to figure out how to respond to that. So I just, again, put out, a call. This is what I did from the very beginning when I reached out to Council President Hucker and said, hey, we've got to start getting proactive here. I do believe that we need to come together and put forth this blueprint and get going, because it's not going to be an easy fix at all. And with notwithstanding the federal money, we still are going to be in a situation that is just not a pretty one. And the idea of just thinking about, raising taxes, again, let's get real on what's happening on the ground. It's not a pretty picture. This is not what we should be doing. So anyhow, I just want to reiterate just my general, thoughts on this, and hope that we can get to work on at least agreeing on some principles moving forward as we deal with all of this other stuff. So thank you.
I would stress, thank you for that, but I would also stress that the tax increase ideas were put on the table by, broadly speaking, the staff report, which laid out all of the revenue options that are before the council and the executive. We're not proposing any revenue increases for this year, next year. So that, I want to be careful never to say never, because 5 months from now, we don't know what we're facing. But at this moment, that's not been part of any conversation internally about revenues. So I just want to lay that out there. Other than that, the county executive would, I think, support everything that you just said, Councilmember Navarro, and would be, if the roles were reversed, would probably be saying the same thing. And what you asked a great question at the very beginning of the hearing: who are we trying to serve? And that is one of the fundamental questions that every government, state and local government, is wrestling with right now, with serving the most vulnerable or serving the needs of our bondholders or future bondholders, and wrestling with that and trying to come up with a good balance for the community of what's affordable now and the future is the challenge we face at the moment.
It definitely is. I think that we don't have much of a choice but to make sure that we are doing all of the above, but in a strategic and looking at prioritization. Obviously, if we ignore a particular segment, in my opinion, it will only exacerbate everything that we're trying to do in terms of stabilizing our county. So, I mean, again, we can spend an entire session on that. The bottom line is that regardless of how people view equity, if we don't stabilize these communities, it's just only going to continue to exacerbate and undermine what we're trying to do, generally speaking, for the economy of this county. So nothing that, this is not news for any of us, but I think it's very critical that we come to some broad agreement sooner than later. Thank you.
Right. Mr. Mandolino, thank you for clarifying that. You're absolutely right. Nobody I've heard proposed a tax increase today. I'm glad you've clarified that. The staff was perfectly correct in reminding us that we have that authority as a part of the menu of options available to the council, but nobody I've heard propose a tax increase today, and I don't expect to. Councilmember Glass.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. Thank you for re-emphasizing the point that I am going to make, and appreciate the continued candor by Mr. Madaleno as this conversation moves forward, and the conversation with Councilmember Navarro. You loosened up a little bit in sharing with us that there are no planned revenue increases, tax increases. Wasn't quite sure I got that notion earlier in the conversation, but appreciate you being forthright with it right now. And in that same spirit of being forthright, for the last 9 months, we've been asking and asking and asking for a plan. And what has come over to us, I think, for me, has been less than satisfying. And I think there's a sentiment that I'm clearly hearing as well, that we're wanting more, recognizing as council staff shared at the top of this conversation that we've identified a $143 million gap in the fiscal year. And so I just want to come back to understanding the expectations, so that we don't have to keep having this conversation. What is the timeline again? And you might have mentioned this at the beginning of the conversation, but what is the timeline again in your internal process for when we will have more conversations about the budget and filling or reducing the hole that we have here with this fiscal year?
I mean, we are open to that conversation any day, every day. I don't know what sort of promise you're looking for.
Okay, well, staff has identified $143 million
in a policy gap. In a policy gap, it's not. It is. That is the difference between what it would take to get to 10% reserves, fully fund our healthcare, our health reserve, our employee retiree healthcare reserve. Those, it's not just this is the difference between revenues and expenditures.
Understood. So then let me ask you it this way. What do you think the severity of the problem is?
I think we have a significant problem, but we also have, as someone who has written out some of these recessions before, we have a federal government that seems to understand the role of relief and stimulus that it did not a decade ago, and has been willing to invest money into relief programs, into stabilizing the economy in a way that just did not happen in the 2008 to 2010 timeframe. We have an administration that's going to be sworn in tomorrow with its first plan, a $1.9 trillion relief package for the economy, to give supports directly to state and local governments for first responders, to pay for the vaccine programs, to supplement the FEMA money, to provide more money to K to 12, to community colleges, to childcare, to transit support, to do many of those things with a Democratic majority in Congress in order there to actually help move these things along in a way that over the last several months, we have not seen the federal government as willing to address the needs of state and local governments. From Governor Hogan, could not have been more forceful as head of the NGA, trying to get this money out of Congress. The comptroller, the treasurer, there is uniform support across the elected leadership of Maryland to get these additional dollars out of the federal government. So I think you have reason for optimism that several weeks ago, several days ago, several weeks ago, several months ago, you potentially did not have. And with that opportunity, I mean, it's one of those things of tomorrow, and then a month later, get an enormous infusion of money and restart it. I mean, we're trying to balance it all out.
And you're absolutely right that there is reason for optimism and hope. Not only what happens at 12:01 tomorrow afternoon, and the optimism that we'll get more vaccines that are desperately needed, and the optimism that you've just articulated that more financial relief will come to states, counties, and municipalities. Absolutely. But one of the concerns I've had over the last number of months is that we continue kicking the can down the road in terms of some of these tough conversations. And I'm not sure the planning is there for if our hope does not materialize. And so I remain hopeful. Tomorrow at 12:01 will be a good time and a good day, but it does not absolve us from having these planning conversations and talking about the budget in a way that we very well might need. And so, I had asked about a timeline. You've shared you've shared the strategy on your side, and so again, I guess we will continue this conversation at another point in time. Thank you.
Mr. President, I just want to quickly note that council staff especially disagrees with Mr. Madaleno's reflection of the gap in the packet. It is not a fiscal policy gap. It is a difference between expenditures and revenues. And so the gap that we talked about in the staff report is $143 million more will be spent this year than the county will receive in revenue. So the fiscal policy issue is $156 million is needed to make a 10% reserve, but the gap is a gap.
Thank you, Mr. Smith. I consider myself a pretty good listener, and I listen to you pretty well.
Great. Councilmember Katz.
Thank you very much. So much has already been said, and as many of you know, I don't like to try to repeat what has been said, but I sincerely appreciate council staff and executive staff as well to remind us of what our options are. We're living in a crisis. That's what we're living in. And we need to look at all of our options to know what all of our options are, especially all the time, but especially during a crisis. And I do appreciate the clarification that no one, underline the words, no one is suggesting a tax increase. First off, the public would be beside themselves, and beyond everything else, they couldn't afford it. We have people that can hardly afford food, much less a tax increase. So that needs to be something that though it is certainly an option, has to be mentioned time and time again. It's not the option we're looking at. We have to, I'm a believer that there's some things in life that you can't afford not to do. We are looking at, in a crisis, people with all these issues beyond basic needs. We're looking at people with issues for mental health and every other type of concern, and therefore we need to make certain that we can fund them. It is important that we fund them. It's an investment in our future to fund the right things. The other thing that has to be mentioned is that I am someone who really believes that our reserves need to be just this side of last resort. But candidly, at this point, at this moment, we're pretty much at last resort. This is a situation that no one pretty much alive today, unless you're over 100 years old, has ever lived through anything like this. And we need to make certain the way we handle it is the way that it should be handled. So I want to make certain that if when we look into our reserves, when we touch our reserves, or the savings that we have, which I'm not opposed to do, but I'd like to make certain that the people from our bond rating people, that we have consultants that will tell us to the degree that we could actually touch the reserves, to actually use the reserves before we would lose our AAA bond rating. AAA bond rating saves us money, so that if we don't have it, then we're costing ourselves money in the future as well. I believe we need to get all the information. I think our staff has done a fabulous job. I believe they know all the information, but I just want to double check to be doubly certain that we do everything that we can do with our eyes wide open. This is an extremely important time. Thanks.
Thank you. Council Vice President Albornoz.
Well, thank you, Mr. President. I apologize to everybody. I'm calling in from my phone because I'm having significant technical issues. So on a lighter note, please don't cut for my tea because we're going to need Zoom calls moving forward. But a couple thoughts, well, many. And I missed a number of the comments from my colleagues because I was going in and out. So I apologize if I'm repeating a lot of things that were likely already said. But just a few thoughts. I am just as optimistic as everybody else regarding tomorrow and the transition, and I am optimistic now that there are majorities in the Senate and the House that we're going to fare much better, especially when considering the lessons learned from 10 years ago and the lack of stimulus that was made available then that caused the horrible recession that then all local jurisdictions had to go through. But we have to remember, too, that the stimulus that Congress is talking about and hopefully will pass will have an expiration date. It's meant to be a stimulus. It's meant to be a bridge, but those funds will expire, and we will once again remain with the same challenges that we had before unless we address this in part from a structural standpoint. And as all of you have heard me say many, many times before, I, like a number of you of my colleagues who were on the council then, were there, when the awful reductions had to be made. But I think it was extraordinarily important, and Councilmember Navarro has made this point many times, and she's absolutely right, that there was a deliberate collaborative approach between the council and the executive branch. As transparent a process as you can possibly have through a budget process for us to try as best we could to be on the same page, not go into our respective corners and then come back with proposals that are critiqued and then go back into our respective corners, but an actual deliberative process in which we sit around a table, roll up our sleeves, and make what we know will be extraordinarily difficult decisions, but done collaboratively and collectively, which I think is important both logistically and administratively and budgetarily, but it's important in the message that it sends to our general public. The other thing that the previous administration did, which I found to be very effective and very helpful, is that government didn't look to make those reductions on its own. there was a true collaboration between our private sector, between our nonprofit sector, and yes, many discussions then with our Board of Education and the then superintendent as these reductions were being considered. And so that was also a very collaborative approach as well. It benefits all of us. I know we're going 100 miles per hour. We're dealing with the pandemic. We're dealing with the awful vaccine rollout. We're dealing with more meetings than I think any of us have ever been in before, and hopefully will never be in again. But it's very important for us to hit the pause button and have these discussions so that it prevents some of the pain and anguish that we know is forthcoming and will help us more strategically address some of these reductions. I was able to hear the comments of my colleagues, Council Members Rice and Navarro, with regards to the reductions in HHS, which I know the administration doesn't want to make. None of us do. And I understand that some decisions have to be made because you got to cut from somewhere, but there does need to be a very strategic approach in how we are deliberative in addressing the needs of our children and youth, how we're addressing the needs of our senior citizen population, how we're addressing the unique needs of our minority populations which have not just been disproportionately impacted by the virus, but are also being disproportionately impacted economically as well, and are on the front lines of what we know will be a tsunami of potential evictions moving forward. And so this work is not going to be easy. I mean, we all know that, but it will benefit all of us to establish a definitive time and place. And I know there are rules that I'm just beginning to completely comprehend and understand on the legislative branch with regards to who can and can't be in meetings. But these discussions have to happen, and they have to happen now, because keeping our fingers crossed and hoping for a federal stimulus, which I'm keeping my fingers crossed and hoping for a federal stimulus, is not going to solve all of our problems, and certainly not all of them in the long term. So I beg that moving forward, we do establish these sessions, and it can be done from a committee perspective, because I do think that helps make sense of the overwhelming nature of our budget. But, you know, March 15th is going to be here before you know it. And then the council will only have a couple of months thereafter to make its final decisions. Let's spend and invest the time right now to address some of these systemic issues so that the next session that we have, we come in more united and aligned. So I know easier said than done, but certainly worth the investment of time. Thank you, Mr. President. I yield back to you.
Thank you, Councilmember Friesen. Quickly.
Yeah, well, I'm glad that Mr. Smith raised the point that it is an actual budget gap. I will point two things out. One, this is spending that is overspent to what was budgeted. That would then have to be backfilled from the reserves that only the council would have the ability to appropriate those funds. That's the definition of an actual gap. Number two, unless you change the policy, which we were told today that there is no proposal for the county executive to change the reserve policy, then it is doubly a gap that needs to be filled. Both of those things cannot possibly simultaneously be true, and we just have to get out of this game of sending mixed messages, because it makes it very difficult for residents to understand how we're dealing with the crisis that we're in. When it comes to federal support, I share the points of all of colleagues about how we're all hopeful that there's going to be competence and compassion moving into the White House tomorrow at 12:01, and we all think that will have some residual benefit from our fiscal picture, not to mention the significant benefit to the country's governance and to our state of mind. But any additional funding that we are going to be receiving should be first and foremost for rental relief, for business support, for businesses, local businesses that are desperately struggling through this crisis, for food security, which has been a major crisis. It should not be to fill budget gaps because we have failed to provide the type of fiscal leadership that is required of the moment when it was required in the moment. That is absolutely not what the stimulus is for. Literally, the stimulus is to pay for residents, to get money into the economy, not to fund our budget shortfalls because of a failure to act. I will say again, I've said it before, that hope is not a fiscal strategy. We cannot bank on that. We're all hopeful, but that is not good enough. And I would just close by saying that we're heading towards a fiscal cliff. And the federal government is going to help with that. They can brace it. But what we have to do is lower the potential fall and make sure that residents and everybody understands when it's coming so that we can brace ourselves for the inevitable fiscal cliff that we're having. You can't possibly go through the type of economic and fiscal and public health crisis that we have been going through for the past 10 months and that we are continuing in for many more months to come, unfortunately, and not have consequences. The question now isn't about whether or not we will have consequences for these things. It's whether or not we are preparing ourselves for the inevitable consequences that are happening. And we have to do a lot better than what we have done today on preparing ourselves fiscally and preparing the public by communicating with them, leveling with them, and being honest with them about what is coming. And up to this point, we have not done as much as we could and as well as we should. And I hope that that will be improved moving forward. I look forward to continued conversations. Obviously, we need them because there are still more questions than answers at this point, and we've got a lot of work to do. Thank you, Mr. President.
Councilmember Jawanda.
Since we had a double dip by my colleague, hope is a strategy, but it has to be followed up with an actual plan and based on what is possible. We're bashing hope here. I worked for the guy who wrote the book Audacity of Hope. I think it's an important part of what we're trying to do here. I will also say more specifically that we have enough, to my earlier point, if we had to cover the budget shortfall for 2 years, and you can answer this question, staff, and whoever's appropriate, we would have enough to cover it based on the savings plan that we have, or excuse me, based on the reserves that we have. Is that correct?
The reserves are about $150 million for general fund reserves that were budgeted in fiscal 21 and about $300+ million for the revenue stabilization fund, so about 550 total. So with a $140 million gap, yes, that's closed by the reserves currently. The only reason I mentioned those two separately is the revenue stabilization fund has slightly different requirements on how it gets used, but the general fund is the most flexible. And so most of that would be used this year under the current circumstances.
I appreciate that. And I don't think anyone here is proposing that's the worst case scenario, right? Okay, let's just frame it. And I would agree with colleagues' call to, we need to get more granular and specific, realizing there are unknown factors like what's going to happen with FEMA reimbursement, like what's going to happen with the federal government. But we should be able to game all that out. If and when, this is what we suggest. If not that, this is what we suggest. And we have to get to that point. So I agree with those points. But I will also just reemphasize that worst case scenario, the folks, the men and women who are working for our workforce and delivering these critical services, implementing these programs to help our residents, driving the buses, doing all those things, that's a part of our response. And if we needed to cover those gaps, we could do it using a rainy day fund that we need from the state as well, and that we want the federal government as well, and we're going to get something. We could do it. So let's just pump the brakes, get a real plan with different scenarios from the administration. And if others have ideas on our side, let's talk about that. I agree with those points. But I just, it's just frustrating to we're confusing the residents and we're creating this us versus them. We're going to provide for our residents' needs. We have the money to do it over the next 2 years in a worst case scenario. And a fiscal plan to build the reserves back up. I also want to put up my final point. We want to build it back up over time. And we can put out a plan over the next 5 to 10 years to say we're going to build it back over time, and this is how we plan to do it. But it's not going to be over the next 2 years because we're in a crisis. We have 3 pandemics at a minimum going on right now, and we're not going to do it. And I'm glad Councilmember Rice, my education colleague, and Councilmember Navarro reiterated it. We do need to look. I didn't bring it up because I wanted to look at the $25 million from MCPS. I haven't gone through it yet, but I want to see what's in there because that's a big concern. They're going to need more money, not less. I agree with that. So let's just see what we have and come up with those plans, please, Rich, Mr. Madaleno, and team under the different scenarios. I think that would address a lot, and we wouldn't have this amorphous conversation back and forth, which we've had before. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, I don't see any other comments from my colleagues. Thank you, Mr. Smith, Mr. Howard, Ms. Michelson, for preparing this briefing. Thank you, colleagues, for participating in it. Thank you, Ms. Bryant and Mr. Madaleno, for being here as well. And let's all stay focused on the responsibility of the federal and the state government to help us get through this. We've carefully prepared for this, but hopefully we'll see some brighter days tomorrow. Thank you all, and we'll see you tonight at 7 o'clock for our vaccination town hall.
Thank you.
See all ride-on service.